live in interesting times. Today's stories. Colombia and others to launch a global call to save the Amazon at a summit. Shopkeepers lose everything to looting in Johannesburg. Zambian students protest against xenophobic attacks in South Africa. A UN probe warns climate of fear gripping Burundi ahead of vote. Bolsonaro accuses UN rights chief of a Macron-style interference. Anti-femicide protests target World Economic Forum talks in Cape Town. An interview with former employer of a femicide victim. Expert predicts water shortages due to Amazon fires in Brazil and Peru. U.S. won't waive sanctions to allow French proposed Iran credit line. Plus, employees share views on living and working in American Samoa. This is Eagle News, broadcasting from Las Vegas, bringing you stories from around the globe. I'm Anna Cui. Colombian Foreign Minister Carlos Holmes Trujillo announced that countries attending a regional summit on fires that have devastated the Amazon will launch a global call for help on the conservation and protection of the forest.
De esa cumbre presidencial por la Amazonía y como consecuencia del Pacto de Leticia por la Amazonía, se hará una gran convocatoria global para avanzar en las actividades propias de actividad regional para la conservación. Personalmente va a participar vía videoconferencia en la cumbre presidencial de la Amazonía y tendremos la presencia muy honrosa para Colombia de una muy importante delegación del Brasil encabezada por el señor ministro de Relaciones Exteriores.
Certain foreign and South African nationals in Johannesburg are left with nothing after falling victim to looting. South Africa has recently seen outbreaks of violence against foreign businesses, sparked by the perception that jobs are being taken away from South Africans.
Very bad. I'm very upset. The government fails us. It doesn't protect us. It's not normal. It's not fair. They fail us. I don't blame the people who are doing the looting. The problem is the government.
You don't deserve it from your own people. The attack is on foreigners, but we are local South African people. What do you get out of this? And what did they gain? I would like to know, what did they gain? Those stupid people, what did they gain from doing this? No one do funny things like this. If yes, you're protesting, don't damage things. I mean, today everything is gone. What are they getting? They really came all out this time. And I was helpless because police phoning me, tell me to come through, come fetch your cars. They're about to be set alight.
South Africa and Nigeria stepped up security on Wednesday after deadly attacks on foreign-owned stores in Johannesburg triggered reprisals against South African businesses in Nigerian cities. Despite a downturn in violence, tensions rose on the diplomatic front as Nigeria declared it would boycott a top business forum, and South Africa's neighbors urged Pretoria to clamp down on xenophobia. Police said the death toll rose to 7 after 2 charred bodies were found in a store in Johannesburg's Alexandra Township. Nearly 300 people have been arrested. Witnesses say that center of Johannesburg and Alexandra remained calm as police boosted patrols following 2 days of looting. Shops cautiously reopened again as some residents sifted around in wrecked stores, rummaging for food and anything usable. President Cyril Ramaphosa reiterated his condemnation of the violence, but acknowledged, quote, "We face a huge challenge. A number of people are taking the law into their own hands." He said, quote, "Taking action against people of other countries is not right. South Africa is home for all. We are not the only country that has become home for people fleeing." Students in Zambia protested outside the South African embassy in Lusaka against the rise of xenophobic attacks in South Africa.
Say no to xenophobia. We already got our independence. It's high time that we fight these South Africans. It's high time xenophobia come to an end.
Shouldn't be killed like that, the way they are being killed. No, it shouldn't happen like that. So this is why I want to fight.
Let us uplift the spirit of Pan-Africanism and Ubuntu. So students in Zambia have condemned this, and we are going to demonstrate to the latter.
Hordes of people, some armed with axes and machetes, gathered in Johannesburg's Central Business District for a third day of unrest directed against foreigners, hours after mobs burned and looted shops in the township of Alexandra, prompting police to fire rubber bullets to disperse them. In a video address broadcast on Twitter, Ramaphosa said attacks on businesses run by, quote, foreign nationals is something totally unacceptable, something that we cannot allow to happen in South Africa. He said, quote, I want it to stop immediately, adding that the violence had no justification. Sporadic violence against foreign-owned stores and enterprises has a long history in South Africa, where many locals blame immigrants for high unemployment. The country is a major destination for economic migrants from neighboring Lesotho, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe. Others come from much farther away, including South Asia and Nigeria, Africa's most populous country. UN investigators said Wednesday a climate of fear has gripped Burundi ahead of next year's elections, with crimes against humanity and other serious violations continuing with impunity. In a new report, the UN Commission of Inquiry on Burundi said local authorities and the ruling party's youth league, the Imbonerakure, were committing gross rights abuses to intimidate people into joining and supporting the ruling party in the run-up to 2020 elections. And it said that warning signals for the risk of atrocities were once again evident in the country. It said, quote, the Commission found that the 8 common risk factors for criminal atrocities are present in Burundi, insisting that the evolving situation must be monitored with the greatest vigilance.
Des violations graves des droits de l'homme et possibles crimes de droit international ont continué depuis mai 2018 dans le contexte de préparation des élections de 2020, comme je l'ai indiqué tout à l'heure. Et les actes qui illustrent ces violations sont des exécutions sommaires, des disparitions, dont des disparitions forcées, des arrestations et détentions arbitraires, des cas de torture et de mauvais traitements et des violences sexuelles.
Those principally directly responsible for creating a climate of fear everywhere. When we started our work, because I was on the Commission of Inquiry in the first year, most of the pressure seemed to be felt in Bujumbura. Now it's everywhere, even the most remote little village. And that's because of the role played by the Imbonerakure.
Burundi has been in crisis since 2015 when President Pierre Nkurunziza ran for a third term and was re-elected in a vote boycotted by most of the opposition. At least 1,200 people were killed and more than 400,000 displaced in violence between April 2015 and May 2017, the UN says was mostly carried out by state security forces. But in a surprise development, Nkurunziza announced last year that he would not stand for election in 2020, confounding critics who accused him of working to extend his grip on power. Yet the ruling party has shown no indication it is ready to relinquish power. Brazil's President Jair Bolsonaro taunted UN rights chief Michelle Bachelet Wednesday over her father's death under 1970s Chilean dictator Augusto Pinochet, sparking a new international row after she raised concerns over a spike in killings by police. Fresh from a spat with French President Emmanuel Macron over his management of wildfires raging in the Amazon, Bolsonaro took aim at Bachelet for allegedly meddling in Brazil's internal affairs by, quote, attacking our courageous civil police and military. Bolsonaro tweeted, quote, the leftist former Chile president was following Macron's line, later taunting Bachelet by praising the Pinochet regime, under which both she and her father were tortured. Bachelet had told a news conference in Geneva that her office was concerned by a hike in killings by police officers and by broader human rights restrictions in Brazil. She said that in Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo alone, quote, 1,291 individuals were killed by the police. It might be police action, but what I want to highlight is that there is an increase from 12 to 17% compared to the same period last year. Bachelet said, quote, in recent months, we have seen also a shrinking of civic and democratic space, highlighted by documented attacks against human rights defenders, restrictions on the work of civil society, and attacks on educational institutions. Bolsonaro's harshest words for Bachelet came later in comments to reporters outside his Brasilia residence. Bachelet, quote, is saying that Brazil is losing democratic space but forgets that her country would be a new Cuba if it wasn't for those who had the courage to curb the left, including her father, a communist brigadier general in 1973. Alberto Bachelet, an Air Force general, was arrested and tortured after a coup brought right-wing dictator Pinochet to power. Bachelet died in jail in 1974. He added, quote, when you have people with nothing to do, they occupy the UN Human Rights Chair. The comments drew a sharp rebuke from Bachelet's successor as Chile's president, the conservative Sebastián Pinera. Pinera said in Santiago, quote, I do not share at all the allusion made by President Bolsonaro regarding a former president of Chile, and especially on a subject as painful as the death of her father. The row comes just weeks away from the UN General Assembly in New York, which Bolsonaro said he would attend in a wheelchair or a stretcher, if necessary, to defend his policy on the Amazon, despite facing surgery next Sunday. Up next, anti-femicide protests target World Economic Forum talks in Cape Town. An interview with former employer of a femicide victim. Expert predicts water shortages due to Amazon fires in Brazil and Peru. U.S. won't waive sanctions to allow French proposed Iran credit line. These stories and more when Eagle News returns. Stay with us. Hundreds of activists protest against the murder and rape of women in South Africa at the start of the World Economic Forum on Africa being held in Cape Town. The protests were prompted by the recent murder of two women, a University of Cape Town student, Uyinene Unene Muratiana, and boxing champion Leandre Baby Lee Yagols.
We've been promised for years, and now we want a statement. Otherwise, he must shut it down, the country.
We're all working round the clock to try to deal with this scourge. It's a big problem. Most of the crime is happening where there are no police. It's in the homes, in the schools, in the post office. So it's so difficult a problem. We need to find a solution, all of us.
The former employer of Salome, who died this weekend after being attacked by her partner in Cagnes-sur-Mer, France, recalled saying, quote, "You're going to end up in a coffin. Is that what you want?" I told her straight up, but it was no use. Last year, 121 women were killed in France by a current or former partner, equating to one death every 3 days. So far this year, at least 100 women have been killed in these circumstances.
Il s'était mis dans la tête que mon pâtissier avait eu des relations avec Salomé. Chose qui était en plus des relations ici à la boutique. Je dis voilà. Et donc à la suite de ça, mon pâtissier me dit Monsieur Noël, j'en peux plus et tout, il m'harcèle sans arrêt. Donc j'ai voulu mettre un peu le haut là et à partir de là, ça a été. Alors après, c'était nous avec ma femme. On était harcelés jusqu'à 11h du soir. Et ma femme a essayé de parler un peu avec elle et tout. Et à ce moment-là, elle lui a dit que c'était pas la première fois, qu'elle avait voulu faire des petits travails et qu'à chaque fois, il s'est opposé parce qu'il ne voulait pas qu'elle travaille, quoi, tout simplement. Je lui ai dit, c'est pas un garçon qui est fait pour toi. Il a rien, il travaille pas. J'étais une fille, parce que Salomé était vraiment une belle fille, intelligente. Elle avait fait des études à Nice. J'ai essayé de lui faire, mais elle a fait un peu la sourde d'oreille et puis elle m'a dit de toute façon, je l'ai dans la peau. Ah bah oui, parce que je lui ai dit, mais tu vas finir comment? Dans un an, tu seras voilé et tout. Et puis je dis, si en plus il devient violent avec toi, je dis, tu vas finir dans un cercueil. C'est ça que tu veux? Je lui ai carrément dit, j'ai dit, c'est ça que tu... Mais bon, ça servait à rien.
The French government on Tuesday announced plans to create 1,000 new places in shelters for victims of domestic violence as outrage grows over the number of women killed by a current or former partner. According to EU figures from 2017, France is one of the European countries with the highest number of such murders, making it second only to Germany. Last year, 121 women were killed in France in these circumstances, equating to one death every 3 days. So far this year, at least 100 women have been killed by a current or former partner. Launching a major consultation on domestic violence grouping dozens of ministers, judges, police officers, victims' relatives, and representatives of feminist groups, Prime Minister Edouard Philippe said Tuesday, quote, "For centuries, women have been buried under our indifference, denial, carelessness, age-old machismo, and incapacity to look this horror in the face." Philippe kicked off the consultations by announcing plans for legislation allowing for the wide-scale use of electronic bracelets to prevent domestic violence offenders approaching their victims. To mark the government's heightened action on the issue, President Emmanuel Macron on Tuesday visited the office of a domestic violence hotline in Paris and listened in to calls as they came in. Prime Minister Philippe said that under the bill, judges could also order an electronic tag for a person who has yet to be convicted of a crime, but who is targeted by a restraining order. Philippe also called for family court judges to be allowed to suspend the visitation rights of separated fathers who attack or threaten their ex, and for women hospitalized for domestic violence to be allowed to file a criminal complaint from their hospital bed. But some feminist groups expressed disappointment at the government's failure to commit large sums of money to the fight against gender-based violence. Caroline de Haas, founder of the group Oser le Féminisme, Dare to be Feminist, said, quote, "No resources have been announced, so frankly, the announcements are disappointing." Environmental expert Cesar Ascora, director of the Amazonian Scientific Innovation Center at Wake Forest University in the U.S., explains that the Amazon plays an important global role and predicts that the current fires raging in Brazil and Peru will produce water shortages.
Entonces, ¿qué vamos a tener como efecto de estas quemas? Si no es inmediatamente, vamos a ver el próximo año escasez de agua. Vamos a ver que disminuyen o pueden disminuir los acuíferos, o sea, el agua subterránea puede estar disminuyendo. El bosque amazónico juega un importante rol global y destruir bosque es afectar esos servicios ecosistémicos que brinda el bosque amazónico. Generación de agua, protección de suelos, ciclo de nutrientes, albergar especies de biodiversidad. La minería también es un contribuyente importante de la contaminación por mercurio a nivel global, y lo preocupante es que es un elemento muy móvil, o sea, está entre el primero o segundo contaminante mundial declarado por la OMS por su movilidad. ¿Y cómo usarla? Ellos viven sanos porque conocen todas las plantas con las que han convivido muchos tiempos, y al perderlas perdemos medicina del futuro, alimento del futuro y industria del futuro también estamos perdiendo.
A senior U.S. official on Wednesday ruled out issuing waivers to Iran sanctions to permit a French-proposed credit line, which Tehran says could bring it back to full compliance with the nuclear deal. Brian Hook, the State Department coordinator on Iran, told reporters, quote, "We can't make it any more clear that we are committed to this campaign of maximum pressure, and we are not looking to grant any exceptions or waivers." He added, however, that he has not yet seen a concrete French proposal and could therefore not comment on the idea. French President Emmanuel Macron has been seeking to ease soaring tensions by bringing some economic relief to Iran, and last month appeared to draw President Donald Trump's interest when Macron said he hoped to arrange a summit between the U.S. leader and his counterpart Hassan Rouhani. Iran has been threatening to take new actions to curb its compliance with the 2015 denuclearization deal, from which Trump withdrew last year as he reimposed punishing sanctions. Iran is upset that it did not reap greater dividends from compliance, but said it would be satisfied if it receives $15 billion in credit, which it would pay back through future oil sales. Hook was speaking to discuss the latest volley of U.S. sanctions on Iran, which target a shipping network that the Treasury Department said has sold millions of barrels of oil to Syria, benefiting President Bashar al-Assad and Lebanese militant Hezbollah.
We did sanctions yesterday, we did sanctions Friday, we did sanctions today. There will be more sanctions coming. We can't make it any more clear that we are committed to this campaign of maximum pressure, and we are not looking to grant any exceptions or waivers.
Coming up, employees share views on living and working in American Samoa. Eagle News will return shortly. Stay with us. Welcome back. You are watching Eagle News, broadcasting from Las Vegas. I'm Anna Kui. Labor Day in the United States is observed on the first Monday of September, but the island territory of American Samoa has taken this federal holiday to another level by publicly recognizing government workers and even private business employees. Eagle News correspondent Arian Torres-Suwan has the details.
Workforce Day is the gathering of all ASG employees. It's a day where all the employees get together to celebrate Workforce Day, including us, the employee of the Department of Education.
Upon taking the office in 2013, Governor Lolo Molinga established Workforce Day throughout the territory in order to recognize and honor American Samoa's workforce in both the private and public sectors. This year's celebration was held at the Whangatongo Malay, located east of the capital city of Int'l. This is the first time the territorial government used this facility instead of Veterans Memorial Stadium, which served as the venue for the past 5 years. The formal portion of the event began with the raising of the flags of the United States and then American Samoa. The ceremony later concluded with a parade of workers from all over the territory. Meanwhile, some workers who took part in the parade shared their views about living and working in this part of the South Pacific.
Increase the pay. The more money they put in, I'm sure that the people are going to work harder. Life's going to be easier. Nowadays, it's very, very expensive, like in the stateside. Better communications with the local people. What they need to hear from us.
As far as the workforce, of course, we have a variety of employers here. Our biggest employer here is the Starkey's Cannery. but also the government. So if you are a teacher and you would like to teach here in American Samoa, first and foremost, I would encourage you to get your degree equivalency certification, which is through the educational credential, educational ECE, Educational Credential Evaluation Agency in Wisconsin. You just have to pay a fee, and they will validate or certify that your degree is equivalent to a U.S. degree. That's one thing if you're a foreigner trying to come and teach over here. And also bring your certificates and your diplomas and your work experience. You will need specifically a work permit, of course, so you need to be sponsored by an American Samoan, or if the government will hire you as a teacher, then you will be sponsored by the government. But those are the basic things that you will need to provide in order for you to apply to become a teacher here in American Samoa.
Later that same day, the governor hosted dedication ceremonies for 2 projects: the newly renovated Fangatongo Pavilion and the new 2-story Hayden Museum. Reporting from Pango Pango in American Samoa, I am Arian Torres Suwan for Eagle News, and I am 1 with 25.
Thanks, Arian. That is today's Eagle News. Join us again tomorrow for the weekend edition. Visit our websites at eaglenews.net and eaglenewslive.com. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/eaglenews and on facebook.com/eaglenews. Thank you for watching. I'm Anna Kui, and I am 1 with 25.